Okay, so we are live today on this. Wasn't it gorgeous, Aisha, looking out this morning with the Winter Wonderland? Okay, so this is where we separate the, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, this is where we separate the Canadians from the people that don't like snow things.
The Canadians from people. I'm Canadian.
I
Just because I don't like snow doesn't mean I'm not Canadian.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
No, that was
when I love looking at the snow. I think it looks so beautiful. And then I went, oh, I need to get my snow tires on my car, and I didn't do that last week. So that's my dilemma in looking outside. Is that, oh, okay, these are things I have to do now. So yeah, but it's fine. It's Canada. We live here. It snows.
And that's exactly, I did not drive today because of that, just because it's the first snowfall and people forget how to drive, right?
Like, oh my gosh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's a nice day to sit inside, and it was really lovely walking in the park though. I like walking in snow with my big boots and my big coat. Okay, so I just got a little punch drunk. It's been a busy week, and today's been a pretty restful day. So thank you. It's Aisha and myself, Aisha Adami Medina, and we're here for Just Talking, and it's part 2 of the myths of grief. So if you are interested in being part of this conversation, there's a Zoom link in the event. And if not, it's here. It's just that we can't really see the comments that are coming up, or if you have any questions. So let's just recap. Last week we talked about, and actually the focus really was to, the thing about grieving alone, that, don't show your emotions. Mm-hmm. And then the other part was being strong for others, which is really funny because it ends up being, well, I'm being strong for you and you're being strong for so-and-so, and nobody's actually really taking care of themselves, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And there has to be a way that we can do all of that. And then one of the other ones that there was a few that we didn't cover last week, or we put in a different context, and that is number 1 is don't feel bad. And so we were talking about not embracing emotions last week. We did talk about it. We just didn't put it in that aspect.
Yeah, that's right.
So like people, and this is the thing that's challenging, is that when somebody's had a long illness, especially, sometimes you can get really torn because you don't want to see them in pain anymore, but you also miss them.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, I like to use words like what a legacy, but just because it doesn't matter if you're 50, 60, 90, you're still going to miss that person when they leave, when they're no longer with us on this plane. What do you think, Aisha?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think that this idea of don't feel bad is really like it's an emotional redirect, and people don't have the opportunity to actually process what they're going through, right? So when you want it, you are entitled to, and you should feel sad about someone, even if they've had a long illness and the passing was expected, right? Because that's another one is, well, they're in a better place, and it was expected. Of course, they had a long life and all that stuff. It's about shutting down your emotion and not feeling what you need to feel. And sometimes you need to experience that. You need to feel sad. You need to be able to grieve. You need to, think about the loss in a really meaningful way for yourself. And so redirecting yourself to say, don't feel bad, put your attention to something else. Like, it's time for them to go. It's better for them. Like, that doesn't help actually, because you're not really processing your emotion. You're just redirecting it. And a lot of times you're just bottling it up and keeping it inside, right? What do you think, Gwen?
Absolutely. And I think the other interesting thing with that is that that's usually because, sometimes with people, they can't handle our emotions. And sometimes we can't handle our emotions. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But again, I remember this one time, it was after, and I wrote that in my book, that, I had the cottage cheese that I just, I posted that a couple weeks ago, that, it was my nanny's birthday and it was coming up. And so at that time, because I was in a grocery store, I stuffed it down, but I was still talking to myself in the grocery store going, well, of course her birthday's coming. And it was the first birthday without her. So all these firsts. And so I was talking to myself in the grocery store because I didn't want to be weeping and, walking down the aisles, when really it's okay if I was. But because of that, what happened, like the don't feel bad, it's like, okay, I'm going to suck it up. And I wasn't doing that consciously. But then by the Friday, that was like on the Tuesday, by the Friday, all somebody said was, oh, I'm wearing the hat your mom made. And I was bawling. I just started bawling. And this lovely, heartfelt woman was like, oh, I feel bad. It's like, it's just crying. It's just crying. It's okay. Like, I'm just sad. I'm going to be sad. Sometimes I'm going to be sad. And I think that, just because Linda Hamilton had to do the one-armed pump for the shotgun doesn't mean that she wasn't feeling a whole bunch of emotions when she was trying to save the world. She still expressed anger, expressed frustration. I know it's a pretty wild comparison, but isn't it really like that? That it's like when we're sad or we're, especially as women, we don't want to be seen. We want to be seen as that, oh, we're tough. And it's like, well, we define what tough is as a society. And I think it's really important to it's okay if you want to cry, if you're sad about something. I would rather that you feel like you could cry if you're around me, than holding anything in. Right. So.
I think that, it's interesting you bring up that point about society and about culture, because we live in a very kind of a very diverse society that has diverse cultures, right? And so there's different people experience grief differently, or they handle death differently. And so there's also these expectations that people have that you're going to align yourself to your culture, your society, and your family and all that stuff. And depending on how you were brought up and what your experience of that is, that plays a big part in how you process as well. So for some people, we're talking about, okay, you need to process your emotions, you need to experience things, and you have to find a way to let it out. For some people, that is very difficult because that's not how they were brought up. That's not what their culture is, So it's kind of trying to find that balance of, okay, that's definitely like being respectful of this is your culture. At the same time, what is it that you can do to honor what you're feeling that makes sense for you, right? That makes sense for you. That's aligned with your belief system, right? It's also just recognizing that everybody's going to have a different way of doing things. And when you said, that we as women, we want to be seen as strong. And I think that to an extent that's true, but I don't know that that necessarily applies to everybody, because some people, they thrive on not being seen as strong, as leaning on support for people, and, and wanting other people to be there for them, because they cannot handle everything by themselves. So there's also kind of some myths about how we should handle things, how we do handle things, and I think what I like about what you said was that we all have a choice about how we can do it, right? You can, but to actively make that choice, right? To not follow something blindly, or to not push anything down, but to actively make a choice about how you want to pursue the grief that you need to work through.
Exactly. Oh, so well said. Don't we love this? I love this woman. That's why she's like, you put things, and that's beautiful. So that's number one. And this is the thing, we could delve into each one of these in our own lives and show times where we believe this kind of stuff. And what happens is that influences how we show up. So one of the other ones is replace the loss. And this is commonly, usually because when we're children, we have animals. That's one of our first engagements in caring for another sentient being is what I'm going to say, because when it comes to pets, they're seen as, a little bit more than a garden, where I love my green babies, but an animal is fed and go for walks or do something like with cats or birds or whatever, but they also sometimes have a shorter lifespan. And so that can be our first experience with death. It can be the passing of a dog or a cat. And the thing is that, they are animals, right? But they still are, we have an emotional connection. Anything that we have an emotional connection with, we need to honor what those emotions are left. So, and also I've heard it for people, that, if you're out of a relationship, it's like, oh, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and so it's really about replacing the loss, so that it's like, oh, well, you can still go out and find somebody else. Oh, you can go and get another, are you going to go get another dog, instead of asking people, how are you feeling about this? That's one of the big things. And I think with replace the loss, it's like anything or any time where we dishonor, and by dishonor, I don't mean actively be disrespectful. I mean, if we don't honor the fact that you felt for this animal, you felt for this relationship, if you do not at least embrace some of those emotions that were associated with that relationship, the next one is not going to be a fully formed new relationship, in another situation, it's also like sometimes when we're not fully not even healed, but if we don't know where all our Samsonite, I know where my Samsonites are. I know it's packed in those bags. I know where they are. But when we come to relationships, if we are attracted by our wounds, so, oh, my ex cheated on me, and then all of a sudden, the other person, and that could be something that joins you, but you're not resolving what was back here. So you can't really create what's coming up in front of you. And so that's a really big one in my mind. What do you think, Aisha?
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think that we don't always I'm kind of, the reason why I'm struggling with this is because sometimes it takes time to process things, and when you're trying to move forward, you may feel compelled to process it faster or get through it faster because you feel like, I need to put an end to this and move on to something else, right? And so I think sometimes there is overlap, and I think that that's also natural. So when I lost my cat Sassy in 2014, Sassy was like, I loved her so much. Like, I had her for 17 years, and so she was like my little baby, and I just adored her. And when she passed, I was consumed with grief. I actually saw someone to help me through my grief. I saw someone who did like creative grief exercises with me so that I could say goodbye to her. And so when she passed, I almost wanted to get another cat right away. Mm-hmm. And I told myself, I said, no, you need to give yourself a little bit of time to deal with this loss, right? So I only lasted, I think, about three weeks before we ended up getting Layla and Sebastian. And the thing about it was that there was overlap, that even when I had them, and I was grateful to now have these other two cats, was that in a weird way, it actually helped me to process Sassy's loss, because I wasn't like, when I lost Sassy, like, I couldn't breathe. Like, I was like, that little animal meant so much to me, right? And there is something about the unconditional love that you get from animals that's irreplaceable, right? And so going through that experience helped me to heal from Sassy's loss at the same time as I was forging a new relationship with other animals. Now, that's very different than people.
Mhm.
because with people you have more complex relationships. You're carrying, like you said, those Samsonites, right? They're with you, and you're bringing perceptions and feelings and experiences into a new relationship with a sentient, with someone who's actually going to be interacting with you in a more full capacity. So, so I kind of feel like there's, I feel like in some cases there's overlap. I don't know. I don't, I'm sorry. I may not be making sense
No,
at
that
this.
totally makes sense, because it's the key thing that you said was that you said, I sat and it's like, oh, should I get one right now? It doesn't matter that you waited 3 weeks and that it was only 3 weeks. And that's the thing, is that everybody's grief is unique and personal. None of us are in the same place. But the whole fact that you actually said that consciously to yourself is almost saying, oh, I know this relationship mattered. I know this little fur baby was my thing, my go-to. And so
Yeah.
the difference there is, even if you only say that once, you say that, that's actually giving your heart permission. That's it. Once we acknowledge something, then we're not hiding from it. And I think that's that's a key that makes it really important, is that as long as we consciously say, you know what, I miss my fur baby, Sassy, I love you, and you're still gonna feel that, right? You're still gonna feel that, and this really it goes into the last one, and these guys piggyback on each other, which is just give it time. So I think the conscious thing is that as long as we, I'm never going to have another nanny, but with the cottage cheese, I picked it up. I wasn't expecting that thing that was going to send me into that little hole. But I was also walking around the grocery store. I didn't really care who was there. It's like, well, of course it's your birthday, and of course it's going to come up. And I was whispering this under my breath, and not really embarrassed, because I cared about this woman. She was an important part of my life. At that point, I think the thing I would have done different is I would have done later that night, I would have gotten into a bathtub and said, oh, Nenny, and consciously let that come out, consciously let that feel. But I think the whole thing with your cats is, you're right, with having, you can have another relationship, and it's not, and again, everybody's different. I think it's just the conscious statement that, Sassy, if now's not the right time, which was like the next day. 3 weeks later, that's fine, right? Like, and again, this is the thing, is that it's not like you have to wait a year for anything, and it's not like you go out the next night and get a new cat, right? And if you do, there's no judgment. But the challenge is that when we don't make that a conscious shift from coming here to going here, then I think sometimes it's not just overlap, it's almost like putting it on top of, instead of going, here's this relationship and I'm sad, and these are my new cats, and these guys are helping me deal with this.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a conscious coupling, that sounds like something Gwyneth Paltrow would say, but anyways, you know what I mean?
I think it is something that she said. I think, I totally agree with you. And I think what's interesting about what you're saying is that, the thing about grieving for people, or grieving, let's say you lose it, you have an intimate relationship, you've lost a partner, you've lost a spouse, right? There is not just what you feel about what's an appropriate time to grieve, to need to grieve, but also the expectations that other people will put on you about whether they think that that's an appropriate amount of time for you to grieve or not grieve, right? And it's being able to separate that and to say, well, that thank you for your input, but I'm the one who decides how long it takes for me to grieve. And then the other thing is that it just doesn't get tied up in a fancy bow, because you might wait a year, you may wait 5 years. And then when you're in another relationship of a similar type with someone, there are things that are going to come up. You are going to experience that grief. You're going to experience that memories. You're going to experience loss again. because of what the relationship reminds you of. And it's to not be hard on yourself in those moments and say, you know what, it's okay, because this is natural. It's natural for you when you're in a new relationship, like, you know, me and the cats, is that it's a new relationship with them. But in that relationship, I still see Sassy. I still feel Sassy. And there is that element of like the continuation of love, right? That you're continuing to be open and to be vulnerable and to love and to know that loss is a part of love and a part of life.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so beautiful. You know, and that's, again, it's like, I think it's just really consciously saying that, yeah, I've got a little bit of heartbreak like right now. I'm going to feel it. And you know what, the more we feel anything, the easier it is for us to move on. And that is because you're actually giving your feelings their due, their seat at the table, as I like to say. So like, especially the whole thing, like with the just give it time, the funny part with that is that, and that's really one of the next ones, is that, and I see the two of those overlapping, because the just give it time, the great analogy that they give is like, okay, I ran over a nail and I've got a flat tire, and it's like, okay, I've just got to give it time. Let me just sit here and wait. And it's like, again, so, you know, the give it time thing is, and I think it's really also because we're not comfortable with our own really strong emotions, because sometimes it feels like you're going to lose control. So it's like, whether we can sit and hold space for other people, whether we can sit with them as they cry, as they feel, and you know, the thing is, especially if it's an inner circle, like, you know, a parent, a spouse, a sibling, you know, those people that know us forever, that we, you know, or know us really, really super well, when we have that kind of loss, there has to be, if we do not consciously move into that, if we don't consciously say, oh, you know what I really loved about this, and this is one of the reasons why I've talked people into doing eulogies, that I've talked people, like, you know, when I talk to them about end of life stuff, it's like, well, I don't want to have like a big thing. And it's like, you're not going to be here. Having this event, this memorial, this, you know, celebration of life, is because you've got all the people that love you. Keanu Reeves, I loved what he said about Stephen Colbert asked him, what do you think happens when you die? And I don't know if you've seen this. He goes, well, I know the people that love us are going to miss us. And that's it, right? That's it. There was also, I'm going to post it on this page on Just Talking, as well as my grief recovery, is Andrew Garfield this week was on Stephen Colbert, and he's just lost his mother, and his dad and his brother were in the audience. And it's quite profound, because he goes, I'm going to cry. He goes, because I'm always going to cry, because grief is just not being able to express the love that you still have for those. So that's why the just give it time. He did more actively for acknowledging his living grief. That grief is the living part of us. It's a feeling, it's an emotion. And so, you know, it's not just about giving it time. It's about taking conscious time to say, even just saying to yourself, well, do I feel like it's time to get into another relationship? Do I feel like I'm ready to go out in the world? Okay, well, let's just do baby steps. Or maybe, yeah, you take an all-inclusive to Dominican by yourself. Whatever that is, as long as it's a conscious choice, right? And as long as it's not, so the one is like, replace the loss, is like, oh, it never happened and everything's done. And then the other is give it time. And so you need to actually do something. You need to take small, you know, correct choices. You need to be able to take steps that actually, as you said, the creative grief, right? What are the things that you can do to help you remember? Like in hospice, it's wonderful how they're taking old shirts of, like, if you're in hospice, taking old shirts and turning them into little teddy bears for the kids that are left behind, the grandkids. And that's their thing, so that whenever they have that thing, that reminds them. And sometimes it reminds them and it makes them sad. And sometimes it's a hug and it's a comfort, because it's just like Sassy was that comfort for you, right? So that's with the two of them. That's why I almost see like they're two sides of the coin, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So what do you
Yeah.
think about?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love you using the phrase living grief, because I think that is a really good encapsulation of what it is. It's not something that is stagnant. It's not something that's stationary. It's something that's living, breathing, moving, organic. And when we treat it like that, then and this really comes back to how Western society in particular treats emotion, right? Is what is your to push everything down and to only show what's acceptable to show, and so on. And it's really about turning that whole idea on its head and saying, this is all natural stuff. This is all human stuff. This is stuff we should be feeling and should be allowed to experience in whatever way makes sense for us, right? So and I also love that you said it's about giving yourself permission, because so many of us don't give ourselves permission. We redirect, like we said last week, you're being stronger for other people. You're doing all those things. And I think that, I think it's natural to do some of those things, as long as you're not doing it to the exclusion of your grief, to the exclusion of your own feelings, right? Because there's also the idea of just keeping busy. And if you're keeping busy to shut down, you don't want to do that. But there are some times when you need that little bit of reprieve. Your brain and your heart and your spirit needs that little bit of reprieve to just do something mundane and ordinary, and something that'll occupy your mind and bring you back to normal life. Because that's the screwed up thing about losing someone that you love, is that life goes on. The next day the sun comes out, things carry on, life is happening as usual. It's not the same for you, but life is carrying on. And then how do you cope with that? So I think that, what's important to recognize is all these things are still part of the grieving experience, as long as we don't use them to shut ourselves down from the feelings and from the experience of grief.
Perfect. And that's our last myth, is keep busy, right? And I think you brought up, thank you, as always, it's perfect. You just put it perfectly into the perfect words, like
piggybacking on your great ideas.
Well, no, it's like, that's why it's just talking. It's a conversation, but that's the great part, is that when you come into the get busy and keeping busy, there is a difference between like cleaning the house, which you don't maybe need to think a lot about, but there's really good scrubbing action that can let you, if you're angry or if you're disappointed, or how did you leave me, or, and this isn't just with death. This is with, we leave a relationship, we leave a job, we leave something that was substantial. It's a change to a normal pattern of behavior. So it's not just about the physical passing of somebody from this plane, but I think it's also an important thing. I love that mundane. That's exactly it. Scrubbing a tub is great when you're grieving. Washing floors, washing walls, going for walks can free yourself, right? I used to say that when I was on my motorcycle, my mind was free. I was completely on and completely off at the same time, right? Well, as long as I wasn't riding in Toronto, so outside. But I think that's exactly it. When it comes down to whatever we're doing, as long as we're being intentional, and even if we're in a place where it's like, I don't really feel like doing anything right now, give yourself that space, give yourself that moment, even if nothing's going on, because you know what, sometimes we just need a breath, right? And so do we still, when it comes to keeping busy, do we still just for life itself, like take a day like today where it's like, I don't want to go out today, and I know we've got all this stuff to do, but let's just stay at home and watch movies, kids, or whatever it is, it's a Marvel day. I know I can't get away from my comic books, but so that's it. So those are, just to recap, we've got be strong for others, and the other thing is don't show emotion, grieve alone, don't feel bad. You know what, the thing that's going to get you through life is feeling whatever you feel and being able to identify that so that
That's right.
you know how
Yeah.
to deal with it the next time or
Yeah.
how much space. Just give it time and replace the loss. And then the last one and most important is keep it busy, because don't we honor workaholism or, oh, look at that person, they're working out 24/7. I mean, that was my thing before. I used to work out all the time. And it's like, sometimes it's great for that excess emotion. But again, it's really the mindfulness of whatever it is that you're doing, the intention of the communication you're having. I mean, it's funny, everything that we talk about here, there's no such thing as a new idea. It's just how we actually allow this to come into our world, right? Am I consciously speaking and putting our words together? Am I consciously allowing my grief to come, my feelings to come whenever they need to come? So this is it for, there we go. And we're just at the 30 minutes because I know, it's a Sunday night. So Aisha and myself, I believe next week we will be back and we will be talking about stuff. That's what we do. We talk about stuff. But if you have any questions about grief or the grief recovery method, please let me know. Send me an email. And also, I just want to shout out for the Toronto Miracle, which is going on this week. Next Saturday is the day where if you want volunteers to come to your house and pick up goods off your balcony, or not your balcony, off your doorstep. I know that we've got 4 condos here that all have boxes. And if you want any information about that, please let me know. And for all our American people, happy Thanksgiving. And may you all have had really good specials on Black Friday. And what's the Monday? The Monday's called something too, right? I don't know.
Oh, Cyber Monday.
I'm not too sure. But anyways, thank you everybody for showing up and for watching. And thank you to Aisha for just being in my life, because she's a fabulous friend and become irreplaceable to me. So I can't imagine life without her. And
oh, I love you, babe. Me too. Thank
put
you.
structure to my thinking. Oh yes. Okay, I know it's Sunday.
I love you, babe. Thank you.
Time to chill. Okay, so everybody have a great week. And we shall see you next week, Sunday, 7:00.
Yeah.
Okay, bye, my darling.
Bye, lovely. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys. See you later.